They found him on a January morning in 2010, under concrete, under someone's backyard, under layers of lies that had taken almost a year to unravel. 2 gunshot wounds to the chest, a .38 caliber pistol, gone since April. 3 years before that morning, this man had been handed something most people only dream about, a check for $17 million. A gated mansion in North Lakeland, Florida. A future that looked like the American dream made real, for a man who had never once had it easy. So how does that happen? How does a man go from the happiest day of his life to a concrete grave in 3 years? And what role did the money itself play in putting him there? What you are about to hear is the real, documented story of Abraham Shakespeare. By the time this video ends, you will understand something that most people never consider when they imagine what it would feel like to win the lottery. Sometimes the money is not the gift. Sometimes the money is the target. Abraham Lee Shakespeare was born on April 24, 1966, in Lakeland, Florida. Not the Lakeland in the brochures. Not the lakes and the orange groves that tourists see from the highway. Abraham grew up in the hardscrabble black neighborhoods, where his parents picked fruit in the citrus groves to make ends meet. He dropped out of school before his 12th birthday. By the time he was a teenager, he could barely read or write. At 13, a theft conviction sent him to a juvenile detention facility. He stayed there until he was 18. The years after that were not much better. He picked up what work he could, swept floors at a barber shop, unloaded delivery trucks, did day labor, odd jobs, anything available. By 2006, he was earning roughly $8 an hour. He had 2 young sons he loved deeply, named Moses and Jeremiah. He was not a man defined by his failures. People in Lakeland remember him as warm, funny, generous, the kind of person who gave what little he had and never made you feel bad for asking. That was the thing about Abraham Shakespeare. He had almost nothing, and he gave almost all of it away. What happened when he suddenly had everything is a lesson that cuts to the very core of human nature. November 15, 2006. Abraham and his co-worker Michael Ford are on an overnight food delivery run from Lakeland to Miami. They stop at a Town Star convenience store in a small town called Frostproof. Ford heads inside for drinks and cigarettes. Abraham leans out the window and asks him to grab 2 lottery tickets. He hands Ford 2 crumpled $5 bills. The next morning, November 16th, every barbershop in Lakeland was buzzing. Someone local had won the $30 million Florida Lotto jackpot. Nobody knew who it was yet. It was Abraham. He chose the lump sum payout. After taxes, the check came to $17 million. $17 million. For a man who had been earning $8 an hour, he did what almost anyone would do first. He took care of his people. $1 million each to his stepfather and his godfather. $250,000 to each of his sisters. He paid off mortgages. He bought cars for friends. He financed homes for family members who had never owned anything in their lives. He bought himself a $1.1 million home in a gated community in North Lakeland. He bought a Nissan Altima. He found a Rolex watch at a pawn shop and bought that too. And then he said something that tells you everything about who Abraham Shakespeare was. In a 2007 newspaper interview with millions in his bank account, he told a reporter, "I'm not a material person. I don't let material things run me. I'm on a tight budget." He even mentioned that on the day he bought the winning tickets, he had given his last $3 to a homeless man on the street. This was not a man drunk on wealth. This was a man who had been given a miracle and was desperately trying to share it without losing himself. But something was already starting to go wrong. Within months of winning, people began coming. Every day, strangers, old acquaintances, people he had never met, people with stories, with needs, with emergencies, with hands out and eyes wide. Every week there was someone at his door. Every week there was another urgent request that only Abraham and his money could solve. He could not say no. It was not in his nature. By the end of his second year, the money was bleeding out faster than anyone could track. He had given away enormous sums. He had been sued by his co-worker Michael Ford, who claimed the winning ticket had belonged to him. A judge ruled in Abraham's favor, but the legal battle cost him time, stress, and money he did not have in reserve. He told his brother, "I'd have been better off broke." He told a childhood friend, "I thought all these people were my friends. But then I realized all they want is just money." By late 2008, he was down to roughly his last $2 million. That is when D.D. Moore entered his life. Moore was a businesswoman from Tampa, or at least that was the image she projected. She owned a nursing staffing agency called American Medical Professionals. She arrived in Abraham's world in October 2008 at a business conference in Kissimmee, introduced through his realtor as someone who wanted to write a book about his inspiring story. She was articulate, polished. She seemed to understand business in a way Abraham knew he did not. She told him she could help. And Abraham Shakespeare, a man who could not read the contract she was about to put in front of him, trusted her. That decision would cost him everything he had left. The transfer happened fast. By January 2009, the ownership of Abraham's home had been transferred to Moore's company, American Medical Professionals. She created a new LLC called Abraham Shakespeare, LLC. She gave herself sole control of its finances. Abraham had signed documents he could not read. Within months, Moore was spending his remaining money freely: a $90,000 Hummer, a $70,000 Corvette for her boyfriend, vacations, personal expenses, all drawn from accounts she had placed in her own name. She told him to stop leaving the house. Too many people wanted his money. It was safer to stay inside. She would handle everything. Abraham Shakespeare, who had grown up on the streets of Lakeland, who had never had walls around him, was now isolated in his mansion, with fewer and fewer people who could reach him. Then, in April 2009, he vanished. He was last seen in Lakeland sometime that month. His cell phone went silent on April 6th. His family and friends began asking Moore where he was. She had a different answer every time. He had gone to Texas. He was in Jamaica. He was in Puerto Rico. He was in a hospital. He wanted to disappear because people kept asking him for money. She was helping him. Weeks passed. Then months. In August, Abraham's mother, Elizabeth Walker, received a birthday card, allegedly signed by her son. It had been delivered by a cousin who said he was just passing it along. Something about the signature looked off to her. In November 2009, 7 months after Abraham was last seen, his cousin Cedric Edom filed a missing person report with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. Police began investigating Moore immediately. Her story kept changing. She claimed Abraham had gifted her the money. She claimed she had purchased the house from him. She sent texts from Abraham's phone pretending to be him. Recipients noticed the messages did not sound like him. Abraham had been illiterate. Whoever was typing was not Abraham. Then detectives discovered something that changed everything. Moore had paid Abraham's friend Greg Smith $5,000 to call Elizabeth Walker on the phone and pretend to be her son. Police tracked the call back to a prepaid phone in a shopping mall parking lot. They watched a surveillance vehicle arrive. They watched D.D. Moore climb out of her car and hand the man a wad of cash. Smith agreed to work as a confidential informant. In a secretly recorded conversation, Moore told him that Abraham was dead. She handed over a gun, and she drew him a map. On January 25, 2010, investigators followed that map to a rural property in Plant City, Florida. They dug up a concrete slab in the backyard of a home registered in Moore's boyfriend's name. Abraham Shakespeare was underneath it. He had been shot twice in the chest. He was 42 years old. His $17 million was gone. When this story first surfaced, most coverage focused on the murder, on Moore's cold calculation, on the investigation. But there is something else here, something quieter and more important. Abraham Shakespeare did not fail with his money because he was reckless. He was not buying jets or gambling in casinos. He gave his money away to people he loved, to people in need, to anyone who asked. That was his nature before the lottery. It remained his nature after. What destroyed him was visibility. The moment his name appeared in the news as a lottery winner, he became a target, not just for Moore, for everyone around him who suddenly saw not a person, but a resource. The generosity that made him beloved in Lakeland was weaponized against him. Every person who asked for money, every lawsuit, every stranger at the door, none of them saw Abraham. They saw $17 million with legs. The second lesson is isolation. Moore's most powerful move was convincing Abraham to stop engaging with the world, to stay inside, to let her be the barrier between him and everyone else. The moment he became isolated from family and friends, he had no one to notice the warning signs, no one to ask hard questions, no one to see the transfers happening in real time. When sudden wealth removes someone from their community, it also removes their protection. The third lesson is trust without verification. Abraham Shakespeare could not read the contracts he signed. He trusted a stranger he had known for weeks, with the legal and financial instruments that controlled everything he owned. There was no lawyer reviewing documents on his behalf, no independent advisor with no stake in the outcome. His generosity left him with very little. His isolation left him alone. His trust left him defenseless. And the combination of all three left him under a concrete slab. D.D. Moore was convicted of first-degree murder on December 10, 2012. The judge at sentencing looked directly at her and said these words, "Money was the root of evil you brought to Abraham. She is currently serving life in prison without the possibility of parole." She continues to appeal her conviction to this day, maintaining her innocence. Abraham Shakespeare's mother, Elizabeth Walker, the woman who recognized that her son's voice did not sound right in a fake phone call, passed away in 2023. She never stopped speaking publicly about her son's story. Abraham Shakespeare grew up with nothing. He worked for $8 an hour. He won $17 million. And in the 3 years that followed, the money he had always dreamed of having became the single thing that cost him his life. He told a friend once, "I thought all these people were my friends. But then I realized all they want is just money." He knew what was happening to him. He just did not know how far someone was willing to go to take it. If this story made you think differently about wealth, visibility, and who to trust, share it with someone who needs to hear it.